A newly published research on a 4,500-year-old archaeological site is changing what we know about ancient people in the Arctic. Calgary-based archaeologist Matthew Walls is the lead author of a new study about an ancient camp on a remote island on the Canada-Greenland border. The research was just published yesterday in the journal Antiquity, and Matthew Walls is here to tell us all about it. He's an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology at the University of Calgary. So tell us a little bit about what was involved in the research.
Well, it's a long-term collaborative project, and the university's been working very closely with the University in Greenland, Ilisimatusarfik, since 2017. And we've done a series of field trips working up in northern Greenland, documenting different types of archaeological sites and trying to learn about long-term relationships with the environment.
Okay, well, tell us about the camp.
Well, it's what makes it very interesting is that it's at this very remote island chain, which is very difficult to access. And when you get to these islands, there's only a couple of difficult beaches that you can get up onto. And when I say a campsite, you can imagine, because we have very slow soil development in the Arctic, you can see everything on the surface, even from thousands of years ago. So there are many tent rings and hearth features where there are ancient fires and scatters of bone and things like that. So just walking over the site, you can see an incredible amount of different things that have been left through time.
Yeah. So tough to get to, like, what's the route to get there? You go in the summer, I assume, in July or August kind of thing?
Yeah, well, the place where these islands are located is in an environment called a polynya, which is a part of the Arctic Ocean that doesn't freeze in the winter. There's a variety of local circumstances, and so it's a kind of ecological hotspot. But to reach there in any season, whether it's the winter or summer, you have to travel at least 50 kilometers from mainland Greenland to get out there. And it would have been a very difficult and perilous trip in that there's very strong currents, there's very high winds, and so there's a lot of risk in that journey. And 4,500 years ago, they'd have been using very small skin-on-frame watercraft.
To get out there 50K?
Yes, yeah. Huh. So you're looking at 12 to 18 hours of difficult paddling, I think, in these situations.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm really struck by that detail because soil development is so slow in the Arctic that it's, the stuff is still strewn about in a way. I mean, what are you learning there at that site?
Well, it is a remarkable thing to walk over these sites and see all those features. Well, what the site tells us is that, it tells us something a little bit different about these early Paleoneolithic communities who are kind of the first communities that we see in the high Arctic. We knew that they had watercraft. There are little pieces you find here and there, but we didn't know the full extent of their seafaring abilities and their navigational skill. And it changes quite a lot in the way that we see them because evidently they're able to intercept different types of sea mammals and travel out into the environment here where they can access seabirds that nest in these islands. And so our understanding of their lifeways shifts significantly, but that also changes maybe how we see the environmental history of that area as well and emphasizes the importance of tracing their impact and their creativity in that environment over the long term.
Okay, interesting. So part of what is new and is changing how we understand the action 4,500 years ago is just that they were there. They were that far off the mainland? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a different image that we previously thought.
So what do you think they were doing out there? Like family camping trip or trying to get to the end of the earth or harvesting?
Yeah, I think a bit of all of that. So there was about 18 tent rings that we saw, which is quite large for this time period and to be clustered like that. And there's all kinds of domestic activity features around those. So it does seem to indicate it's a whole cross-section of a community that's making that journey. So yes, families would have been there. And then the site is located right below a nesting colony of a species called thick-billed murre. So these are seabirds that nest by the thousands in the cliffs. They lay eggs. And even today, that species is very important for harvesting and accessing for the local Inuit community. So certainly
eating the birds or grabbing eggs?
Both. Yeah, at different seasons. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a primary reason for going out there, but also incidental hunting of sea mammals and things like that you encounter along the way.
Yeah. So it went by quickly, but describe what we know about the vessels that they would have been able to, this incredible crossing, huge seas, like Arctic Ocean stuff. And you said skin on frame, but how big, what do we know about about what they would have made that crossing in?
Yeah, so from this time period, there's not such great preservation from about 4,500 years ago, but there are one or two sites in the Arctic where we get little tiny fragments that tell us a lot that they're building, as I said, skin-on-frame crafts. These would have been very similar to kayaks that later Inuit groups are using. You have kind of a sealskin covering, and the hull is shaped in a way that you can paddle it over long distances and things like that. But there's a lot of variation in how they can be used. So to get out across this to the islands, you need quite a lot of navigational ability and certain dimensions of the watercraft themselves in order to be able to cope with those conditions.
Yeah. Well, interesting. We're talking about 4,500 years ago when Greenland and Canada and the relationship between Arctic nations is spending a bit of time in the news for a bunch of important reasons. Do those dots connect from your perspective, like the implications of your research and some of the geopolitical stuff that's happening now in the Arctic?
I think there is some relevance, yeah. And you wouldn't normally consult an archaeologist about geopolitics, but certainly I think it adds an important layer to what's happening today. And many different countries are emphasizing the importance for Greenlanders to be able to choose their own future. Certainly Canada's position and Denmark's position. And I think this adds an important component to that the Indigenous heritage that's called forward into, kind of asserting that right and that sovereignty really does go back a very long period and right into the formative stage for some of these Arctic environments that we understand and know today too. So there is that long-term anchor that I think does matter and is important to express in the present.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So we're just about out of time, but this is continuing research. Like what are the next questions or things you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a continuing partnership with the University of Greenland, so student projects and things like that are happening all the time. And we have a new grant, so we'll be doing another 5 or 6 years of work there. And I think just exploring that environmental history a little bit further and trying to understand the long-term influence that Indigenous communities and their management has had over this area. There's an agreement between Canada and Greenland over the co-management of this area that's sort of coming into development that I think in the next few years is going to be taking place.